Welcome back to episode 2 of Crash's Customs, the part 2 of the Gaslands car build. Last time we made a car, Grim Reaper, to go in the car. Now we're making the car itself. We're going to take it apart, customize it, paint it, ruin it, repaint it, and make it better. So you can see we are taking the car apart and taking the paint off. There's a lot easier ways to take paint off, but I am taking it off this way, making it kind of scratches and dings and anything you could think of. I'm just really ruining the car, and that's the aesthetic that I'm going for. You can see that I'm actually burnishing in some scratches and some dings, and that wasn't enough. That Dremel bit didn't do enough, so I took this Dremel bit and did it even more. We are just scratching and digging into it. I've actually made a big nick out of it, and as you can see, there it is in the background. And I have everything out in front of me that I'm going to make some plating and some armor. You can see we're snipping apart bread ties, and I'm keeping the shavings. I'm actually using everything in the little bread tie that I got, and I cut it out the size that I want. These are armor that's going to go over the wheel, and I keep those little shavings and I glue them on, as you can see right here. And that little clear plastic that's on the left there, that actually was the windshield of the car that I noticed fit really well on the hood. So I saved the windshield to use as the hood because I redid the windows, as you'll see later on in this video. And so I'm just getting everything ready and getting all my greeblies and goodies together, ready for painting, and figuring out where I want to put them. A little toothpick and some masking tape will hold that in and be a great way to hold them as you paint them. Some metal grating to go inside the car. I just cut one sheet and just shoved it right in there. As you can see, not really technical. Just kind of punch it in there any way you can. My favorite 5-minute epoxy. Make some of that up, mix it up, and add those to the little wheel wells that we're making from bread ties. I love repurposing things. It's really kind of nice to not fill a landfill and to actually use something that wasn't really intended to be used for this, that would normally be trash. But using a little epoxy to go over the wheel wells. When you're doing this, you want to make sure that you have enough clearance for the tires. That was a mistake that I made. I should have pushed those out a little bit more, but I made it work. After we got the wheel wells done, I painted it completely black off camera. It wasn't really super exciting, so I skipped that part for you. But we're taking some stencils now and airbrushing some stencils, some little spiders on the car. And I am intentionally doing it very dirty. The stencils aren't really held really close, so it's fuzzy and kind of not as defined as you could make them if they were on a flat surface. And I took time to make the spiders, but I am actually intentionally making them loose and dirty because this is a car that's from a wasteland, and you're not going to take time to make the paint job. You're going to customize your paint job. You like spiders? Sure. You'll paint some spiders on, but you're not going to take the time to really go in there and do a nice detailed paint job because these cars were meant to be disposable. So the Reaper has customized his car to an extent, I guess. Now that we have the white on there that's over the black, I'm going in with some green, and so I could really just spray right over it and it's not going to show up too much on the black. And if it does, that's just going to add an extra layer of excitement onto the car. And so I spray painted it green, and now I'm coming in with another different type of black. This is a smoke black, I believe, from Wicked Colors, and that smoke black is going to kind of give it a little bit different of a black. It's more of a smoky kind of, a little bit of gray in the black, but it leaves a nice aesthetic. So I'm weathering these things with a little smoke black. The guns that are going to go on the back of the car, weathering those up. Now we're making some mud or some rust. We're going to paint some rust on the wheel wells, and that is a straight rust color from Model Color. I think Vallejo makes those colors, and it's fairly watered down at first. I kept it really watered down just to kind of get a good base down and see how it was going to lay, and then I come in with a thicker paint later on to do some highlights. I tend to do that a lot when I'm painting, is I go really light at the beginning and then I layer in some more colors. And I figure the way that I see it, the more colors you lay in, the more exciting that paint job's going to be. It's going to have a little bit more depth and realism. If you just have one color, it's not that real, because in this world, there's not really one color. Just look at your hand and you can see there's reds, there's blues, there's greens, there's a bunch of different colors just in your hand. And so I'm duplicating that. Not all mud is created equal. And so we're creating some rust and some mud that is a little bit more realistic and unique and neat. Not much to it, just really dry brushing, and it's a really fast paint job. I'm not really trying to be clean here. I'm painting fast and dirty and messy, and if I paint outside the lines, that's just going to make it look more realistic. That's one thing I love about these apocalyptic, dystopian kind of paint jobs. And so here I am making a little bit more interesting of paint with some green and some different shades of brown. And I'm taking a sponge and I'm just dabbing the sponge on the bottom of the car. So that actually makes a neat technique to make like some mud splatter at the top. The key here, though, is that you want to keep it, you got to be very careful about how much paint you have on your sponge. And so you can see that I'm dabbing it on the paper towel until it lays down the right color that I want. It's similar to stamping, so you have to have the right amount of color on it. And if you have not a lot, but just a very little amount of paint on your sponge and you dab it, it's going to leave some really neat textures. And you can even drag it and it looks like mud just kind of hit the hood or the wheel well and just kind of spun up. So it's, again, a really quick, dirty, easy technique to make some mud splatters. And now I'm coming in with some black, and we're going to do a black wash to darken some of the recessed areas. And as I was doing it, I realized I didn't like the straight black, so I brought in some brown. Even though the brown, you can hardly see it, it did make a little bit of a difference. And so bringing in a little bit of different colors in your wash can, add a bit more character. Always be mindful. You got to be careful with the colors, making sure they complement each other. If they don't complement each other, they're going to clash a little bit. But as long as you get the right colors together, you're going to create a much better paint job with layering in some different types of colors. A lot of my painting was involving, as you can see in the background, grays, whites, browns, rust. That's the recipe for this car. It's seen some hell for sure. You get a Grim Reaper driving it in some post-apocalyptic wasteland, it's going to see some things. Those on the front there, you can see that it looks like little bars of metal. What it actually was leftover pieces from the cage that I put in the top. I saved a couple of those that fell off. They came untwined from that metal grating. I just pasted them on. And so now that we have it painted, I sprayed it with a little Tester's dull coat. We get to try and put this Grim Reaper inside the driver's seat. A lot more difficult than I had thought. You'll see. I'm going to snip him down so that he's just the upper torso. And the Procreate, when it cures a little bit more pliable. And so I'm able to bend the hands. You can see that I was bending the hands there. And I realized that he's not going to fit in there with that seat there. So I had to cut the seat out. So I snipped and I clipped and I razor bladed and I clipped some more razor blades and some clipping and more razor blades, a different type of razor blade. And I got him in there almost to the point where the top of the car would go down, but his head was hitting the roof. He was sitting up just a little bit too high. You could see he's difficult to see in there even. So, more snipping, more razor blades, more snipping, and finally we get him to sit in there. I glued him in there. And after he was in there, officially glued in there, not moving, that actually took a while to get him in there. And now I'm just kind of fitting and making sure I know where I want my guns to go. I was debating the side there, as you can see, but I think it ended up being on the back of the car. Once I'm confirmed there, those are actually remote control car parts, just little random ball joints and tubes that I found from remote control cars that I had laying around that I used. The test fitting to make sure everything is fit right. Bend the metal a little bit because something was dragging there, but got everything in there. And now I'm making 5-minute epoxy again. Got some more 5-minute epoxy, and I'm actually putting it inside of the pins there on the bottom of the chassis. And squishing together and holding it together. And I'm actually more epoxy on the bottom and clamped. And I kept that clamp there overnight, actually, so that it will cure together. And so after the next day, the car is assembled for the most part. I'm bringing in some more epoxy, and I add the guns and the header of the engine, and then this is almost done for the build. I found 5-minute epoxy works really well. I enjoy 5-minute epoxy. The more I use it, the more I realize I really, really like the stuff more than glue. And so there's a lot of times where I just reach for that 5-minute epoxy, even though it takes a little bit longer to set. It holds stuff really well. You can see from the back, the profile of the car is a little bit crooked. But again, it's a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's not a perfect car to begin with. So these mistakes and these imperfections that it has, why not just roll with them? Because those imperfections are going to make them interesting. If it was perfect, it wouldn't be in this world. And there it is. We let the, obviously, epoxy dry. I don't think it fully cures after 5 minutes, but the following day, here's some shots that we got of it, black and white, just to show you some of the texture. The texture was created with glue and epoxy. I just left some epoxy on and dabbed paper towels, and it created a really neat texture. So when you paint over it, it looks like that metal is actually eroding right there. You can see. So super glue and epoxy, just dab it with paper towels, let that super glue dry, and it creates a really neat texture. As you can see, there's our Reaper in the car. The bread ties that have become wheel wells. The Grim Reaper in the driver's seat. Focusing out. There's some more texture. I was really surprised at how well the texture came out. It looks like eroded metal. And there's our